things in life that's certain. Death, taxes, and 85 will always go.
Welcome to New Stripe City, a podcast for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie. And if you guys listened to my last episode, I had none other than sports agent and former Bengal John Thornton on last time. Be sure to check that episode out. Me and John spoke about a multitude of things, from the Bengals front office and how they react to free agency, who he sees staying between Zeitler, Drake Kirkpatrick, and Andrew Whitworth, as well as the chances of the Bengals, bringing in a guy like Leonard Fournette. So if you haven't checked it out, you definitely want to check it out. He's dropped a lot of inside information pertaining to the team, and he's also a fan of the Bengals himself, so he always is willing to talk Bengals. So definitely check it out. It's an interesting episode. Just want to let you guys know that we're also in the Android marketplace as well, Google Play as well, and the iTunes store. You can find us under New Stripe City. We have some big things underway. We're getting ready to launch an actual website. I know some of you guys have been paying attention to my blog and everything, but we're taking the next step in developing a website. I'm not going to give away too many details, but be ready. This will be a game changer. Definitely excited for the future. You can also catch us on Facebook at New Stripe City, as well as our YouTube channel. If you guys, for those of you who might not be able to find an avenue to listen, we're also on YouTube. So make sure that you check us out there, subscribe, comment, leave your questions. I'd love to hear from you guys and love to hear what you guys want me to talk about, speak on, all of those things as well. So without further ado, we've got a couple of things to talk about this week, mainly Bené Benwikere, as well as Victor Cruz, Jason Pierre-Paul. We'll talk some Taco Charlton. We'll also take a look at some of our 2017 scheduled opponents. So first off, the Bengals signed Bené Benwikere. A couple weeks ago, he came from the Carolina Panthers. Originally, he was cut after the game against Julio Jones, where he went off for 300 yards, and then he was released, and I believe he was claimed by Miami, and then Miami recently released him, and the Bengals, actually decided to pick him up. He actually had a couple of other teams that were interested, but he did choose to go with the Bengals, and it seems like he said that he had a great meeting with the coaching staff, and he felt like this was the right place for him, which isn't surprising because a lot of players actually love the environment with the Bengals. It's more of a family atmosphere. The coaches really care about the players, and they want to get the best out of them. In his time against Atlanta, he actually was forced to play on the outside. He's really a nickel corner, but he was forced to play outside since Josh Norman had left. And the Panthers were really young at corner. They really didn't have guys with experience. So they actually kind of made him switch to the outside. Now, he says during that game that the Falcons had a strategy where they would take Julio out of the game, throw another Falcons receiver in there, and make that receiver run goes so that Ben would be basically gassed. So, the first thing that I thought was, why are we signing a guy that got torched for 300 yards? And people are super excited about him. And then I dug a little deeper into it, and I found out that he was actually a pretty good corner in the nickel. He's not really an outside guy. There were some guys saying that they think that he could possibly replace some of the guys here. I think he's a good player, but I won't go that far. I really won't go that far. I think that depending on how things play out with Drake Kirkpatrick's free agency, I think he is somewhat of an insurance, because if Dre does leave, I really see them actually sliding in William Jackson III to the outside, because William Jackson III is not an inside corner. He mainly plays on the outside. So if Dre leaves, I could definitely see them moving William Jackson III to his position on the outside. Uh, we could possibly still see Pac-Man. I mean, if Pac-Man leaves, I think it's also insurance for him as well. But we could also see Pac-Man on the outside. Darqueze Dennard, to me, he's not really a great inside corner. He kind of struggled there last year. Between him and Josh Shaw last year, I kind of favored Josh Shaw, even though Josh Shaw was beat as well. So I don't have any issues with the signing. And I do think that Ben Wickery could actually end up competing for that slot spot. Now, I could see that. But to say that this guy is going to replace a Pac-Man or a Denard or any of those guys, that's kind of a stretch to me because the Bengals do have a lot of talent there. And you have to consider that not only do they have those guys that I named, but they also have Kivari Russell. They also have some other guys there as well, Josh Shaw. I mean, so it's a crowded locker room, but I could see him possibly competing for a final spot there. So I mean, I think I like the signing. It's not, a crazy signing. I mean, as long as it keeps guys that I don't like off of the roster, like Chikey Brown, that would be good to get him replaced by this guy. But other than that, I think it's a solid signing and something that we can definitely pay attention to and see what he does in our system. I've also heard that another reason that he was cut from Carolina was that he was kind of at odds with the coaching staff there, so that could have had something to do with it as well. So it seems like there were different takes from both sides, but overall it seems like there was just some kind of disconnect there. So he could be one of those guys that could potentially be a steal for the Bengals down the road. Next, we'll talk about a guy that's hit the market that was pretty decent initially at the beginning of his career, but kind of fell off towards the end. And we'll talk about Victor Cruz. And there's a lot of people that think that the Bengals should take a look at Victor Cruz, think that he would be a good asset. And I'm just looking at some of his numbers. So last year, he recorded 39 receptions for 568 receiving yards, a touchdown. So, I mean, he didn't really have a huge impact, but you have to think about it that the Giants, for the most part, played in three wide for the majority of the season. I think Victor Cruz was actually hurt when we played them, but, he kind of was in the slot majority of the season. He's playing with Odell Beckham Jr., Sterling Shepard, so he didn't really have an opportunity to thrive as much as he did, and, I mean, given the opportunity that he did have, he really didn't do much with it. So, to me, when I look at the Bengals' makeup, I don't see how he would kind of, in a sense, fit into this offense because they already have Tyler Boyd in the slot. I mean, Tyler can rotate from the inside to the outside as well, but, if you keep a guy like Brandon LaFell, it really doesn't really make too much sense to bring in a guy like Victor Cruz as well, especially a guy at 30 years old. If you're going to bring in somebody at 30 years old, I think that you should easily go after a guy like Deshaun Jackson. Victor Cruz has kind of struggled with staying healthy over these past couple of years, and it's kind of tough to say that that'll slow down with him entering into his 30s, him getting a little bit older, excuse me. It's intriguing, but I think Victor Cruz is more of a name now than a guy who can come in. I mean, now he could still have something left in the tank. He seemed to allude in an interview that he still does have something left in the tank, but to me, you kind of have to prove it, man. I actually was a big Victor Cruz fan when he first came in the league. I remember the guy coming in during the preseason as an undrafted free agent and making the roster, and I remember watching the game. I think he was wearing the number 3 where the guy pulled in like a touchdown with one hand. He scored like 2 or 3 touchdowns. It was like ridiculous, but I don't know if he's still that player, man. I mean, if he was really still that player, I don't think that the Giants would have cut him. But I think he'll actually be a pretty decent pickup somewhere. I think he'll definitely outproduce the numbers that he did last year with a bigger role. Now, he has visited with the Carolina Panthers, but it doesn't seem like anything is imminent. So there could definitely be competition out on the market for Victor Cruz, but like I said, I don't think that he's going to be a guy that's like a super game changer for the Bengals. In my opinion, I'm not saying that they should pass on him, but depending on what kind of money this guy's asking for, I think is what should be the major, in a sense, factor in whether we should pursue him or not. I'm not gonna lose sleep over us not pursuing him. In my opinion, I probably would rather have someone in the draft over Victor Cruz. But he has shown that he can be a good player. But like I said, all of those factors going against him with production, age, I think that the Bengals probably would be best suited to pass in this situation. So, since we're on the topic of New York Giants, there was an article out this week talking about how the Bengals should go after Jason Pierre-Paul. To me, I think that's a little bit unrealistic. Jason Pierre-Paul is a great player. He's going to command a lot of money. Let's just be real. And if you listen to my podcast last week with John Thornton, the Bengals tend to try to replace premium positions that cost a lot of money through the draft. So, I mean, I don't see us going after Jason Pierre-Paul. He's a great guy. Would love to have him. But obviously, you have to look at some of the decision making there, and not blaming Jason, but the guy blew off his fingers. I'm not sure if you really want to give a guy that much money that was not making the most smart decisions, I guess, at the time. He's definitely a top defensive end in the league, but that's going to come at a price. So I think a lot of people are going to pay for Jason Pierre-Paul. If I'm not mistaken, he's one of the best defensive ends on the market. And the Bengals do need some edge rushers, but you have to look at who they're paying right now. They're paying Geno Atkins, they're paying Carlos Dunlap, they're paying even Michael Johnson a pretty decent amount of money. So to sign a guy like Jason Pierre-Paul, and like Thornton said, they're not going to go ahead and pay an outside guy more than some of their inside guys. And you look at factors with Carlos Dunlap of him and Geno possibly being up in a couple years, they're going to look to get paid. And you have to look at it last year. The New York Giants went out and signed all of these other guys, and a lot of people gave them kudos for that, but look at the situation that they're in now. Now they might not be able to bring it back, Jason Pierre-Paul, so that kind of sends a message to the locker room. So if they were willing to go out and sign other guys, what does that mean about Jason Pierre-Paul? Is he still going to be a point of emphasis for New York? It's hard to say. So I would love to have him here, but obviously, at the price range that a Jason Pierre-Paul is going to cost, I think that the Bengals should pass. And, a lot of people don't think that that's the popular route because they want to see the Bengals make an impact signing and all of this. And I do want them to make an impact, but I still want them to be smart about it as well. We don't want to end up in another Lavernius Cole situation, or an Antonio Bryant situation again, where you're getting a guy that's not fully healthy. Not saying that that's the case with Jason Pierre-Paul, but the Bengals were kind of burnt in the past when they attempted to do that. I think focusing on their own guys like a Witt, a KZ, and a Drake Kirkpatrick would be more suited for them instead of pursuing a Jason Pierre-Paul. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about free agency. Witt came out and made some interesting comments. He actually said that he wants to see what the Bengals are going to do in free agency first. He wants to see which key agents they will basically retain. He also wants to know exactly where he stands with the Bengals. He said that he's willing to come back, but he kind of wants to wait and see what the market looks like, and he kind of wants to, in a sense, see what they're going to do. So that makes things very interesting because it seems like the Bengals, all indications have been made that they're not going to re-sign Kevin Zeitler. So how does that play into Witt's decision? It's hard to really say. John Thornton seems to think that Witt will end up staying because he doesn't see a guy being that old wanting to, move to another city, change his route to work, have to take his kids out of school and move his family. So that could be a factor as well. So we'll have to see what happens in terms of Witt. And now I'll touch on another topic, and we'll talk about Taco Charlton. Taco is a very intriguing prospect. Paul Dehner of Cincinnati.com and the BBP seems to think that he would be a guy that kind of intrigues the Bengals, which I kind of agree with that just based off of the size metrics. He's 6'6", 272 pounds. To me, when I look at some of the red flags with Taco, things that kind of worry me about him is his production. Okay, he had 3.5 sacks, and then 5.5, and then recently this past year he had 10.5. So his production is kind of all over the place, and that in a sense somewhat scares me when it comes to him. I'd probably say that he's a very athletic guy. He has a rare combination of length, size. Some of his athletic traits as a rusher are pretty good. But it seems like consistency is a major issue when it comes to him. He needs to use a better way of using his length to keep blockers off of him. I definitely agree with that. And he doesn't make enough plays when it comes to the run. I think that he can definitely be more productive in that area. But at the same time, a guy like Myles Garrett also struggles against the run as well. So we have to see what he can do. His toughness is also an issue, depending on which scout that you talk to. But like I said, he's a rare athletic kind of guy. He fits that Bengals mold. But to me, I don't think he fits the Bengals mold in terms of consistency. They really like to get guys that show a consistent history of production. And that's what's weird when it comes to this draft class. When you look at a lot of the defensive ends, a lot of them actually don't have consistent sack numbers outside of a Derek Barnett or outside of the guy from Florida State. His name eludes me right now, but those guys actually have some of the most consistent production. DeMarcus Walker is who I'm talking about. So to me, I like Taco. He's actually graded pretty high by NFL.com at 6.58. So his grade is actually pretty high, and I think that he could be a guy that I don't know. I don't feel like he would be the right guy to pick number 10 overall, in my opinion. But if they really have to reach for a guy, Taco could be that guy. When you're looking at the defensive ends, Taco, like I said, is graded at a 6.5. All right, and I'll just pull up the grades here. So a 6.5 through a 6.99 per NFL.com is basically a good NFL starter with Pro Bowl potential. Okay, now let me read off the list of some of these guys that are listed as defensive ends. So you have Myles Garrett. He comes in first. You also have Solomon Thomas, which in my opinion, I think Solomon Thomas is more of an inside guy, but they have him as an outside. You have Jonathan Allen. To me, he's also kind of an inside guy that can play outside. And then you have Taco Charlton. So it's kind of funny that Taco is rated so high. I've heard a lot of people in draft scouts say that they're not as high on the guy, but he's kind of in that area where the Bengals are going to have to, in a sense, pick one of the best players. So the top, it looks like he's actually rated in the top 12 prospects here. So you have Myles Garrett number 1, Fournette number 2, Solomon Thomas number 3, Jonathan Allen number 4, Malik Hooker number 5, Mitch Trubisky number 6, Jamal Adams number 7, and Taco is number 8. So it's kind of, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not saying that he's going to get picked there, but I think that there's a good chance that the Bengals could have some interest in him. To me, again, I'm still not sold on the Bengals picking an edge rusher in the first round. And matter of fact, let me not just say edge rusher, but defensive end. They've never picked one in the Marvin Lewis era. I've stated that before on the podcast. They have taken an edge rusher, though. A lot of people are saying that, the Bengals, they love their types of defensive ends, and that's true to a point. But you have to consider that with Marvin Lewis's pick in the 2005 draft, his first-round draft pick was David Pollock. David Pollock is not a guy that's 6'6", 275 pounds. So, I mean, he has a previous track record of going the other way and trying things out. Now, we all know how Dave Pollock ended. Didn't end well. He had a career-ending injury early. So, that could have played some type of a factor. But I think that Marvin Lewis still has tried to pick those quote-unquote tweener guys and tried to bring them in. And, I mean, it's really failed, honestly. You look at guys like Dante Moak, some other guys that he's brought in just haven't worked out. But listening to an interview with Paul Gunther earlier, he said that he's just looking for guys that can that can rush the passer. And one interesting thing that he said was, we need to stop trying to convert pass rushing linebackers to defensive ends, or vice versa. If a guy is a defensive end, let's just rush him from a defensive end, even if he's undersized. So even if he's 6'3", 250, go ahead and try to still rush him. Now, in my opinion, I think Tim Williams is going to be one of the best edge rushers from this class. He fits that mold, but will he be there for the Bengals in the second round? I highly doubt it. I mean, he really is a guy that should be picked in the top 10. In my opinion, I almost feel like he should be picked in the top 10 over Taco Charlton, but because of some of the off-the-field concerns, he possibly will get pushed to the middle of the first round, possibly late first round. If he's there in a second, you have to take this guy. But overall, I think Taco Charlton, he only scares me from a production standpoint. I think he could end up being a pretty good starter, but that lack of production is kind of scary, man. You don't want to have a guy with a lack of production at number 9. I mean, there's no way to tell which way it could go. But we'll have to see. I'm not totally opposed to it either. So if Taco Charlton ends up being the pick because he goes and blows up the combine with some kind of measurables, or he has a better medical grade than some of the other guys, then I could kind of see that pick happening. But he's not that bad of a player. I mean, some people are really upset about that, and I understand that point because from a value standpoint, it is a slight reach. But we'll see, man. Guys move all over when it comes to the draft. And it's funny because I love draft season because a lot of unpopular opinions come out and guys start to debate and all of that. And I love it because another thing that I pointed out just from my research was that Myles Garrett's production was kind of shaky as well. And he could be a guy that's kind of being overrated right now. So, I mean, to each his own. You can have your opinion on guys, but I wouldn't be mad if Taco Charlton was the pick. Let's just put it that way. Of course, I want a Reuben Foster. Of course, I want other guys that could possibly be there. But, we'll see what happens. I mean, we'll see how this thing plays out. But to wrap things up, I want to talk about the 2017 schedule. So, the schedule as far as the times and the dates obviously have not been released yet. But let's look at our opponents. So we already know that we're playing our typical ones when it comes to Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. But there's some other teams that we will be taking on this year, and I'll start off with our home games. So we're going to be playing against the Detroit Lions, the Buffalo Bills, the Houston Texans, the Chicago Bears, and the Indianapolis Colts. I think that Chicago will probably be an easy win for us. They're going through some turnover here with their team. The Indianapolis Colts, they're kind of a wild card. They do have Andrew Luck, but they're kind of, in a sense, going through the same thing. The Houston Texans, that's low-key become a rivalry between us. That's kind of a toss-up game there. If Brock Osweiler is still playing there, who knows? Who knows how that can go? And then the Buffalo Bills, they're kind of in a transition time too because they really don't want to pay Tyrod Taylor. They're going to possibly have a new quarterback. It could be Cardale Jones. I think that's another win for us. The Detroit Lions, they definitely took a step forward last year, and that could be a tough game for us. The Jacksonville Jaguars, these are some of our away games. The Tennessee Titans, the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Denver Broncos. It's going to be interesting to play them next year. I don't know how that game's going to go. the Denver Broncos. We actually played pretty good against the Denver Broncos the year that they went to the Super Bowl. Still mad about Mike Nugent missing that field goal. AJ McCarron actually almost led us to victory over them. And then obviously we played them last year, and that was a loss that kind of made me upset because we made Simeon look like a world class passer, which was kind of crazy. And then you look at the Green Bay Packers. We're taking on Aaron Rodgers. He actually has never beaten us so far, so hopefully we can keep that up next year. Tennessee Titans, they're an improved team. They're on the come up. I really can't call that game right now. But I think that we make it past Jacksonville, depending on what they do. If they keep Blake Bortles, then that bodes well for us. Tennessee, like I said, that's a toss-up. Green Bay, that could go either way. I think Minnesota. That's going to be interesting to see that dynamic between Ken Zampese versus Mike Zimmer. I can't really call that one at this moment. But once we get to, I guess, the actual schedule, once we get dates and times, I think what I'm going to do is definitely speak on the schedule for this year. I did that last year on a podcast, so we'll definitely get into that this year. But with that being said, I'll go ahead and leave you guys with a who day, all day, every day, and especially on Sunday. Like I said, man, make sure you guys subscribe, comment, send me and tweet me what you guys want to hear and want me to discuss. I've changed the Twitter name to @NewStripeCity just to make it a little bit easier for you guys to follow me. So yeah, don't feel shy. You can @me, send me some of your questions and everything. And we actually will have a new guest upcoming on our show. We're gonna have on the Wise Guys, and for you guys that aren't familiar with the Wise Guys, they're actually some guys that are on Beat Wave Radio in Cincinnati. Guy that's a Bengals fan, and there's a guy that's a Green Bay fan that's from Cincinnati. So I'll have them on, and we'll talk about a multitude of things from Andy Dalton to why some local guys in Cincinnati choose to cheer for other teams. You'll definitely want to tune in. These guys are pretty good. But yeah, you guys enjoy your week, and I'll be back to you with some more news. You guys take it easy.